Ghostwire Tokyo is the new game from veteran game director Shinji Mikami, creator of the Resident Evil series, and if you didn't know that, I don't blame you. It took me finishing the game and watching the credits to learn that, which honestly makes no sense. Legendary game creator is creating a new game? You know what? We'll leave that information out. I'm sure no one will care. Granted, Ghostwire is most definitely not another Resident Evil. Whilst there are horror elements in its enemy design, it is most certainly not a horror game. It can more accurately be described as an action-adventure game set in an open-world Tokyo with horror elements. Can't really put that on a box though. So, what is Ghostwire about? Akito, our main protagonist, dies in a car crash. But before crossing to the other side, he is possessed by a dead paranormal investigator named KK. And trust me, when I say that streaming this game had me sweating bullets every time I said his name. Right after that, a necromancer decides that he'll enact his plan of purging the entirety of Shibuya for some big scheme, aside from you. For reasons unexplained, you're left in Shibuya with the investigator, whilst the rest of Shibuya is spirited away. What's left is a lovingly crafted Shibuya which you can explore and complete missions within. And when I say lovingly crafted, it is insane just how much detail and care Tango Gameworks have put into creating an accurate representation of the district. Every point of interest has been mapped out with incredible care, from the famous Shibuya crossing to the more humble locations such as Killer Street. For an open world game, this may seem very quaint compared to the open pastures of Skyrim or the fantastical world of Elden Ring, but it's all the more absorbing to explore something familiar. When you're not exploring Shibuya by foot, or floating from building to building using yokai, you'll be fighting them. Combat can be described wholly as a first-person spellcaster. KK, as a paranormal investigator, has mastered the means to defend himself from the paranormal using arcane arts, which are now usable by you. These spells can be split down into wind, water, and fire, each used for different situations in different ways. You use them to try and reveal the core of all the yokai you fight, allowing Akito to pull out and defeat the yokai in question. A simple but satisfying loop. Because it is first person, you'll be seeing your hands a lot as you fight, which Tango Gameworks have gone to extreme lengths to make look good. And they really did knock it out of the ballpark. Each spell has unique animations, there are multiple animations for taking out yokai cores, breaking seals are fluid and emotive, and the animations alone add a lot to make the game visually impressive. In general, between the yokai and animations, there is a staggering amount of creativity on display here. Hand gestures and animations are unique and expressive. Yokai designs are simultaneously descriptive and creepy, always having the correct air of warning the player what kind of enemy they are, whilst playing into the creepy, otherworldly atmosphere that the game is trying to uphold. I found myself with an overhanging feeling of curiosity as I went from side quest to side quest as well. Despite the combat feeling very samey as you progress further and further into the game, side quests kept surprising me and entertaining me in different ways all the way up until the final chapter. Before I do move into some of the negatives though, special mention once again to the visuals. Ghostwire utilizes shaders and unique gaming quirks in a spectacular way, creating sequences which made hairs on the back of my neck stand up, really adding to that air of unpredictability that ghost hunting brings by nature. Unfortunately, for every bit as great the visuals are, the soundtrack can't really hold a candle to its flame. There is one standout track that I can remember after playing for the entire game, and I think the only reason I remember it is because it was paired with my favourite visual segment in the game. Bosses are a non-issue. The first boss of the game is the only one which presented much of a challenge, and that was reused towards the end. So either all their creativity was put into visuals and not gameplay, or the studio simply ran out of time. And then the open world falls into that late game pit that most open world games do. There's just nothing to do in it. To Ghostwire's credit, there are only enough side quests in the game so as not to get repetitive. As mentioned, I was seeing unique ideas right up until the late game, but otherwise the open world is pure busy work. Exercise the local yokai to a region, repeat across all areas. Hoover up the spirits across the map, all 240,000 of them. Go dumpster diving for cats, repeat 100 times. I guess I should commend Ghostwire for holding up creativity in the most mundane and repetitive tasks, but it stretches my patience after waiting behind a pillar for a kappa to eat a damn cucumber for the 5th time that day. Finally, there's the story. If you don't want to be spoiled, just jump to the next chapter. Okay? Okay. It's okay? Turns out, Akito was run over whilst on his way to visit his sister in hospital. Now possessed by KK, Akito convinces him to let him still visit his sister just to make sure she's okay. For some reason, she wasn't spirited away like the rest of Tokyo, and she's somehow special to the necromancer who caused all this. So the story takes a turn for Akito and KK to save Akito's sister and stop the necromancer in the process. Through it, we meet other paranormal investigators who worked with KK and learn precious little about them in the process. Lincoln was looking after a new recruit called Erika, and then she disappears and Lincoln feels responsible. There's Ed, he doesn't talk to people. Erika, we don't even meet full stop and get half-baked monologues during a boss fight as to why she was killed. Then only 2 people who get any kind of development are Akito and KK. But even then it's half-baked, and feels like we're missing half of their story. It's trying to be a sort of character study of what it means to live, living without regret and loving your family, which is fine, but half of the story beats are missing, told through exposition and just simply badly presented. There is a good story underneath, but it's like Ghostwire is reading every page which divides by 3 and missing out the rest. It's a bit of an odd one. Despite being one of the most creative projects in the last year and being created by a video game superstar, it had precious little advertising and marketing. Releasing to a mild applause from a half-empty movie theatre, Ghostwire sold middlingly despite having a genuinely unique gameplay loop which has plenty of room to grow, stunning visuals, and an enjoyable open world, let down only by repetitiveness in its relatively shallow combat system and a lackluster story. Despite all that, I do look forward to seeing where Shinji Mikami and his team take the game, if anywhere. I have one. How did you go through an entire roll? Oh! Once commonly used in Japan to record TV shows and the like. Yeah, just in Japan. Nowhere else, I swear, we swear. Cursed videotape equals porn. That is not what that is!